open process is, how do you measure success? Like, what's the success of, very often people talk about integration, but it seems that that's a part of the process that's kind of handed off to other people in the company. Like, how much involved are you on how do you measure success of an acquisition?
Yeah, I mean, for us it's very simple. We have a business plan that we put for the business for the first 3 years that is very robust. I mean, we do complete bottoms-up build-up for the plan, for the business prior to closing the transaction. That involves every single input from every region, every geographic region, all the sales owners, business owners, and everyone sign off on that business plan. We have a business plan that gets approved by everybody and gets signed off by the board. And we measure our performance of that business plan. I mean, it's really, I mean, there could be more qualitative things, like, there's a spillover effects to other business groups, so maybe there's some cultural things that we, require businesses that have very good marketing expertise, and then maybe the learnings transfer to other groups, but it's just harder to measure. So I think from that perspective, it's for us, like, we really do compare on a quarterly basis, how did that business perform versus our original business plan, and what has changed. I feel like we go through an exercise of building the bridge, like what has changed.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
Yeah, easy answer. Basically, same thing. Is we have a business plan that we march to. There's very tangible measurements that we do in that business plan, and there's also things you can't measure, kind of intangible synergies that you look for, but you can't discreetly measure them. And quarterly kind of check-ins on all those metrics, or sometimes more often, depending on where we are in the life cycle of the business. You mentioned 3 years. Ours are similar. They vary by the deal size, and so multi billions or tens of billions of dollars transactions just inherently have a longer deal life cycle for that business case to play out. So it would be 10 years plus, but also the little tiny, the 2-person startup, that entire transaction was complete in a very short period of time.
So as a quick final follow-up on this one, what are the things that basically the parameters or that typically derail a deal or make an integration fail, or making the acquisition unsuccessful, either pre-deal or post-deal, like things maybe that happened recently that you can remember?
I would say a category versus a specific thing, and as a global company with a very diverse sales force everywhere, probably the biggest challenge, or the thing that I pay attention to the most, is the channel. We have licenses of enterprise licenses, we have direct sales teams, we have inside sales teams, we have SaaS renewals, we have on-prem licenses, we have stuff in every country in the world. So really, if we're going to take something and sell it, I've got to go through who's going to sell it, are they equipped to sell it, do they know what it is, do they know how it's sold, can they do renewals, do they know what a SaaS product is, are they comped the right way, are they, all the get it from us to them in a global sales force. It's probably one of the more complicated tasks.
Sounds like you do a lot of prep work prior to.
We do.
Yes. Cool. Natasha, what
I mean,
derails deals or integrations?
financial performance, I think is the most, you do the deal and all of a sudden the quarterly results come in, you're like,
But what would be the, other reasons?
Yeah, that's
You
the
mean during the
output of
process?
my channel
Yeah.
not working.
Yeah.
But, it's
Oh,
also
you mean
the
like
financial
during the
performance.
process or post-process?
Yeah, both. Like pre-acquisition, what makes a deal not go through?
I mean, post-acquisition, I could bring 2 examples that we have where, one was very well-known example, and Logitech did a very large acquisition of life size. Right around the time I joined, it was the largest acquisition the company has done. They went into the video conferencing space. And I think of the business, it's at the time, there was a fourth player in the video conferencing business after Cisco and Tenberg at the time, Cisco Corp, Tenberg at the time, Polycom, and LifeSize was a small player. So we bought this business because we said, look, we make $100 webcams, and they make $15,000 equipment. Imagine if we actually bridge the gap, create open networks, and we bring $1,000 solution in video conferencing. That was the premise of the acquisition. And it was the largest acquisition in the company's history. And I still remember during diligence, one of the corp dev people told me, he's like, do you realize that they don't believe in that vision? And because they want to continue to go after enterprises, proprietary systems, very heavy equipment, continue to go against Cisco. And so we fundamentally have a vision conflict. And but we, was one of those things that the company really believed in would be transformative acquisition for us. It was obviously the largest acquisition in our history at the time.
How much was that?
400 million.
400 million.
Yeah, so we did the acquisition, and the business actually performed well the first 2 years, and we let them continue with the vision. They continued to build MCUs, they continued to go upstream, and they continued to go after enterprise businesses. They never believed in the vision to go down, and they just didn't. And eventually that market turned. I mean, people in the market familiar with what happened, and then we kind of left that business pretty independent, operating independently. And all of a sudden we jump into the business, we start redoing the strategy, we start to get involved in portfolio planning, but it was just too late, it's gone too far. And at that point, when the market's already gone a little bit away from them because they were small players to begin with. So at that point, we ended up partnering with a private equity fund, and we divested majority stake in the business.
Okay, interesting.
And so, yeah, I mean, I would say that's a clearly, but we actually have a business now that is bringing $1,000, $2,500 price point video solutions to enterprise. And it's over $200 million business for us that's growing at 50+% that we build organically. So it's a lesson where the vision, it's very important.
Okay, excellent. So we have probably about 10 minutes for questions. So yes, I'll maybe somebody can help me pass around the microphone. That'd be great.
Hi, thanks so much for your talk. So you've mentioned that you look for companies that are
Can you talk really closely to the mic? Is it on?
I don't think so.
Okay, let's try this one.
Test.
Okay.
You had mentioned that you look for companies that are pre-VC or pre-outside capital. You had also mentioned a little bit about the motivation for selling the company shouldn't be to go to the Bahamas, and I was envisioning how a lot of times founders don't understand that when you get acquired by a company, you actually have to stay there for a little bit to get your earn-out, that kind of thing. So I guess kind of a twofold question. I guess to you, what percentage of your companies have an earn-out component? And I guess to you, how do you go about finding those founders who haven't gotten outside capital? Because kind of what I'm sensing is that the way you get your deal flow is through, people who have funded them. And I see that as a big problem. They say 65% of deals happen without a banker. So it's kind of a lot of, Facebook and WhatsApp's a good example. So it kind of, from the founder's perspective, they really need to learn how to hustle and get in front of you guys and find a way in so they can actually build a relationship so that if there is an earn-out, they actually go, okay, I like IBM. I want to work with this team for 3 years, as opposed to, look, we need to sell quick. We got to find somebody. Let's start cold calling. So kind of like, what should they do to kind of get in front of you before they need you, and when they don't have a VC to make that intro, and what's the percentage of earn-outs for your deals?
So that's like 3 questions in one. I have to be more strict for the next one, but that's okay. So yeah, one question, short, and question mark at the end. That's okay. First one. Go ahead.
I don't know if I remember them all. I'll attack the one. I think the core of your set of questions was around retention and earnouts, and I'll speak for myself rather than the whole organization. Is when I approach a given company and a deal, I want to know if the leadership there wants to stay. Take everything else off the table. Do we have a vision you want to execute? And then, if you do, then I'd love to retain you and keep you and give you opportunities. And maybe we have several IBM general managers and senior executives who came in through acquisitions, and they were in a $20 million company when we bought them, and now they run a $1 billion division. And they clearly saw that something that they wanted to do, and it was a positive career choice for them. I have also seen companies where the CEO was hired to sell the company, and they say that straight up front. The day you buy this is my last day, and I'm okay with that. That's a career choice. He's going to go do that again in another company, and receive a payment, a good, nice chunk from doing this, and I'm okay with that. Just be upfront with me. And so, do we structure? So, in his instance, I wouldn't offer him any retention. I would give him a package that is aligned with his interests to go on to his next deal, and make sure that there's a clean transition and there's a line of succession. And maybe one of the things he's got to do before he leaves is go find the person who's going to run the company after we buy it. Okay with that, but I want people to want to be there. And so it also depends on the company itself. So we have purchased companies where the core of the company is the people, and not just the 5-person leadership team, but like services companies where you really want to keep the top 50 or 100 people in that company. It's very important from a services perspective. And so what the retention looks like in those situations is different than if I buy a tech company where there's 2 guys who wrote all the code and then just a bunch of lead coders that they hired that are doing replaceable jobs. Then my retention looks different in those instances. So the answer is always my favorite answer. It varies. But the rule at the end of the day is I want their interests and the deal to be aligned together.
I guess for us, the earnout, if there's not a private equity fund on the other end, we always try to bridge the gap with earnout. So I think retention, some sort of RSU or earnout is always a good way for us to. There's challenges that come with it because people want to argue operating principles and what happens post-acquisition, but I think we do try to bridge that gap with earnout in most cases. In the last 2 transactions, there was a private equity owner involved, so they usually do not want to have any earnout, so we were able to agree on an upfront purchase price. So I think, and then in terms of deal flow, if we're looking for pre-VC, I think, and I could be oblivious to what we do not see in our spaces, but I feel like we have a good coverage. We're very diligent about making sure we do Kickstarter reviews. Like we do that and thank God for Kickstarter and Indiegogo, they have a lot of companies now out there, so you can actually just, if you scan it continuously, you kind of know every consumer hardware company that is building something. And then we go to a lot of the demo, whether it's Hacks demo and other accelerated demos. And our BGs are actually very active in the space. I feel like we get a lot of inbound from them. And we actually have had multiple conversations with companies who are looking to raise money who would come to us at the same time. And because we've done some investments, so oftentimes they would come and say, well, look, I'm looking to raise investment. I would like to have Logitech as a strategic partner. If we're interested in buying, we've actually, on a couple of occasions, we've actually done analysis for them. This is what you would raise. This is how much you would get diluted. This is how big you're going to have to get to if you want to, versus what we could pay you in cash today. So we've done those analysis for founders where we basically have them compare. So are you willing to take, and there are situations where founders believe that they could get to a lot bigger scale and they'll rather take VC money, or they would prefer cash upfront. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Todd, you look like you had something to add on that.
I think there's also a decision of some founders. In the high growth areas that I often touch, they are still comparing IPOs to M&A. And if they're in it, there's blockchain companies out there that they all think they're going to be multi-billionaires. And we have a similar conversation of, this is what I can give you today, or you can roll the dice on that and see where you end up. So it's a similar kind of.
Yeah.
Yes, one question, yeah.
There are times when a deal needs to move very quickly,
Yes.
and there are times when you are able to put your thesis in place, landscape, and take your time in a reasonable fashion. I'm curious how you guide a process in the event of really needing to move quickly, how you get leadership aligned, et cetera, and how that looks different from a more traditional process.
So how quick is quick? What's the quickest?
Well, but how do you get there quickly? That's the question.
So, I would say one of the things I've experienced is we do a tremendous amount of work before we ever talk to the other party. And so by the time they hear from me, I have a fully vetted business case, consensus amongst all my purchasers, and a purchase price in mind. And I can often walk in and say, here's an offer, you got 24 hours. And they're kind of like, ah. And so that's where I'd like to be. And sometimes that's not the case. And you're in an auction, and you got 5 other bidders, and you got to go through a process really quickly. But even in that case, I usually have a very good internal. It's unusual that an asset goes up for sale, and I'm unprepared for it completely. Like I had no idea that was going to happen. We're usually sufficiently tuned into the market that we kind of know what's going to happen. If we think we're interested in it, we start doing our homework early. And so by the time we get there, we're still I'm not in a position where I'm on the other side of that thing trying to make a decision and build consensus in 1 week or something like that. And if that does occur, usually we just will not participate. I'd rather miss a deal than make a bad decision. So.
What are typical triggers for a deal? Because sometimes you can take your time, sometimes an asset's already having some offers, but what triggers acquisitions for you?
Well, so what triggers an acquisition for me to go execute my side of the acquisition?
To decide to make an offer.
It's not a simple answer. It's the we see the strategic alignment, we see the opportunity, we've created a business case, we have a hypothesis on what the synergies are, we understand, I think I can pay 10 for this, but I can derive 30 from it over time, and I've kind of got all that plumbed, and I get to a point and I say, all right, this makes sense, let's go have a discussion.
So it sounded that offering basically an acquisition with 24-hour offer was kind of mean. And you guys do that?
By the way, that's don't quote me on that, it's hypothetical, but there's
typically a few days, right?
Yeah, there have been deals that have executed very, very quickly, and some in something close to a 24-hour time frame. But in that particular instance, there was a competitive bid process going on. There were other parties involved. They had just walked out of an exclusivity agreement. And we said, now we're going to go, and we had it all kind of pre-plumbed.
It's funny that like an offer to give a lot of money to founders is actually a little bit mean in a way.
Yeah.
If it's a really tight deadline, like how do you guys manage that?
Well, 24 hours is tough. We like to do diligence. We like to do integration and diligence. That's kind of a lot of our deals. I was talking to somebody, a lot of our deals, diligence is really partially integration for us. But I would say the process I was just thinking of when we've gone super fast, and I think on some of the transactions where we would do our typical diligence, I think the fastest was like 3 weeks from signing the term sheet to signing the transaction, which to me is still fairly fast because we have to align so many.
I should clarify that 24, that was the term sheet.
Yeah.
We did still spend 3 weeks with the company afterwards crawling through diligence and other things. Yeah.
But I think sometimes the pressures come where you're like, okay, we have to do this deal like in 2 weeks, so we have to get everybody on board, align, or maybe less. So I would say in that sense, our leadership team is very good. Like our CEO always says, deals die because of old age. So we can't let the deals sit. We just have to keep moving. He always walks in and she's like, okay, let's get it done in 2 weeks. So I think that helps to at least align everybody to move quickly. But I also say we have to then, at that point, we have to decide what would make us walk away. If the business slipped in the last month, would that make us walk away? If they have a manufacturer that we have to switch out, would that make us walk away? If they don't have certain compliance or certification, would that make us walk? So at that point, we literally have to have in our mind what would make us walk away and just go focus on that. The rest we're going to deal with.
Yeah, I agree
It's
completely.
just kind
That's
of
part of
how
that consensus process that I mentioned earlier. It's not just what would it take for us to do the deal, but what would it take for us to not do the
The
deal?
deal breakers.
And what are the boundaries for that? So we go in like it's all pre-plumbed.
So it sounds like something I could apply like an entire life. But anyway, one more thing is around, I'll probably end with one more question, very quick one from the audience. But one question I have is, roughly, how many deals go from term sheet to closing? What's the percentage, roughly?
50.
50%?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't cite you an exact number. I think we're a little sensitive on the internal operations, but I would comment that for us, diligence is often much more confirmatory. We know, especially if you're buying larger companies, you can do a lot of diligence on that company prior to ever speaking to them.
So you don't have a lot of surprises during the due diligence?
Like a public company, I've got all their finances, they file everything. I usually know they're doing annual reports and doing public presentations, and you got bios on all the leadership, and their customer set. I mean, you can do a tremendous amount of diligence on even a smaller but a public company. So I have the ability to, if I'm playing in that larger end of the pool, it's possible to come very armed with a lot of information prior. So therefore, diligence is often much more confirmatory. I'm just making sure that this is actually what I think is going on, and is actually what the, what I get a little into their accounting, but
So it's not the smaller deals. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, one final, very quick question. Yes.
Quick. There's a microphone over there.
Microphone.
You already got the mic.
Thanks.
Somewhere.
I'm Bennett Cohen with Shell Ventures, and my question's about incentives. So when we're looking at venture capital deals, which is more where we spend time, we're always thinking about the people around the table and how they're motivated. So as corporate development people, and feel free to answer about yourself or just generally in the industry, I get why companies want to make acquisitions for different reasons, but how are corporate development professionals generally incentivized, motivated, compensated?
Did you get 1% of that 30 million?
I'll just talk for myself. It's salary, and I know there are others that are. I have heard of other organizations, some of my peers, as a percentage of deal or something like that. But it's interesting. I think that presents maybe sometimes conflicts of interest, and so I think it's a conscious decision to not do that.
Otherwise, you would try to do bigger deals.
Yeah.
Or you may try to do
Play
deals
against
that
the house.
aren't the best for the company,
Yeah.
but would be the best for you. So.
Yeah.
I mean, I think for us it's the same as salary, but because we have a small team, everyone in our team does have stock in the company. So I think in some ways it does act as an incentive, right? So we have to continue to make sure that stock performs, and how that plays out. But we're not tied to. We get deal trophies. So.
That's completely my motivation, by the way. Lose sites.
Best practice right there.
Lose sites. We have a long discussion with the bankers what the lose sites going to look like. Absolutely.
What do we get? We get T-shirts or something? We have steak sometimes. Okay, we have to close here, so I know you have a question you'll have to ask privately. We're going to take 5 minutes bio break because we're a little bit behind, and so see you in 5 minutes. Thank you very much.
The audience should be on this panel, right? They all experience.
That's right.
Thank you so much. It was intimidating, but somebody moved up.